chapter 2. Where we left off for chapter 2 is the first two stages. We remember we had to, for the budget, we kind of had to plan it. And then we kind of figured out what our standards are going to be so we can implement it. The last two steps are assessing the results and taking corrective action. Those are the last four steps of the budgeting process. Okay. And so we have to be able to assess the actual results of our processes that we put into place. Were they effective? Were they not effective? Okay. Did we meet our budget or did we not meet our budget? Okay. And so what we're going to do really quickly is we're just going to evaluate the information that's up here on the screen and determine whether or not this is a good situation or maybe we have some more work to do. Okay. So one of the things we want to look at first is our budget. So we budgeted for sales. Remember, sales is always at the top because we subtract everything else from that. So we budget $1.3 million for sales. Okay. And we actually brought in 1.4 million. So are we over or under in our sales?
Over.
We are over. So is that a good thing?
Yes.
Yeah, we brought in more money than we thought we were going to. Okay. So that means our sales are up. Okay. Now, if we look at our food and beverage, okay, our cost for food and beverage, we thought we were going to spend $430,000 on food and beverage, on the ingredients to make all of our recipes. Okay. We actually spent $410,000. Is that good or bad?
Good.
Right? That's good because we brought more money in and we kept our costs for food under control. Okay. So that means our food and beverage costs were lower. And then the last one we want to look at is our labor costs. So our labor, we thought we were going to spend $425,000 on labor, but in reality, we only spent $400,000. So that means we spend more or less than we thought we were going to.
Less. But now I understand that's a good thing, but when you say we only spent, I mean, that really puts into perspective.
Yes, right. We only spent $400,000, but we also brought in $1.4 million in sales. Right? I know sometimes when we say things like that, it's kind of hard to even comprehend spending $400,000 on labor alone. But that's absolutely, when you think about these operations for an entire year, the money that's coming in and the money that you're spending on labor and food to produce that, this is why we always want to make sure that we are in the correct proportions, right? So, the two line items that we did not look at is this gross operating profit and prime cost, okay? Gross operating profit, that is essentially our sales minus our food and beverage cost, okay? It's not net profit. Net is what you take home, right? That's the very bottom line is the net profit. Gross operating profit is a way that we can very quickly identify the effectiveness of what we're doing as far as controlling our food cost. So, because we just look at basically only food and beverage cost. If we tried to put this all down in the bottom, it might get confused and might get lost with all the other expenses. So that's why we have food and beverage listed as second, because that's not one of our most controllable costs. Okay. So if we look, we budgeted for our food and beverage cost to be 31%. But in reality, it's 29.3%. So that means we did a really good job of controlling our food costs. Okay. And same thing with labor. We budgeted to be 32.7, but in reality, when I compare what I spent compared to what I brought in, it was actually only 28.6%. So you can see how those numbers are lower. Okay. So this is a really awesome situation. We brought in more money than we thought we were going to, and we controlled both of our costs, both of our expenses. Okay. Let's look at the next one. Our sales. We budgeted 1,332,000 and we brought in exactly 1,032,332,000. Right? So is there any difference? No, our difference is zero. There's no difference. Okay. Food and beverage costs. We wanted to spend 400,000, but we actually spent 450,000. Is that good or bad? We spent more money than we thought we were going to, right? So our variance is $50,000 over budget. Okay. And then our labor costs ended up being exactly the same. So we're in good shape there. Okay. So if we take a look at this gross operating profit, this section right here, originally our gross operating profit was supposed to be 932,000 and it actually is 882,000. So we're short by $50,000. Okay. So our beverage cost is higher. Is this a good situation? No. Right? If we look at our sales right here, we budgeted to have a 30% food cost. We actually had a 33.8% food cost. What does that number mean? That's a good question. I'm glad you asked. Okay. What does that mean?
Means you spent 3.8% more than you were planning to.
Exactly. So let's put it in a perspective that maybe sounds like a little bit more, because if you're not used to thinking about percentages, right? What the difference between 30 and 33.8, like Tanner said, is 3.8%. Okay. That's essentially 3.8 pennies on every dollar that we bring in. On every dollar that comes in, 3.8 pennies has to go to cover the cost of the food that we brought in. Okay, that's what that 3.8% represents. 3.8 pennies. So almost 4 cents on every dollar that came in is money that was wasted. So if we can control that cost, if we can aim more for that 30%, then that means 30 cents for every dollar versus 33.8 cents for every dollar that comes in. Okay. And so think about, you're like, oh, 3 cents per dollar, right? Well, what if we do 3 cents? I'm gonna do it on my calculators because I'm a little brain fried today. 3.8% times $1,332,000. That's $50,000. Well, duh, it's right there. I should have just known that. Okay. What could you do with an extra $50,000? Right? And so you as a manager, once you realize you've got an issue here, you as a manager have to assess the results and then take corrective action. Okay? And when you take corrective action, that's your opportunity as a manager to kind of play detective. Okay, why did we spend $50,000 more, but yet we brought in no extra sales? If we brought in extra sales, then it makes more sense to spend more money because we sold more food, which means we have to buy more food to sell that food, right? But if we don't buy more food because we're not selling more food, but we're just buying more food because something was wasted. What if an employee, a prep cook, rather than using FIFO, which is first in, first out, instead of using FIFO, they make their chicken salad for the day and they put it in the cooler. And then tomorrow they make the chicken salad and they just put it in the cooler and push the one back. Right? And so that one sits in the back and it spoils because by the time we find it, it's already past the expiration date. We have to throw it out. That's wasted product, wasted food. Okay. Maybe we're having a lot of issues of food being returned to the kitchen because it's made incorrectly. Okay. Now, is it an issue with our kitchen? Do we need to have more training? Or is it an issue with our servers? So for example, and stop me if I've told you this one already, because I have two classes and I can't remember which one I tell to which class. When I was at TGI Fridays, I went on from Chester's Hamburgers, and now I'm in like a sit-down restaurant, casual restaurant, and people are ordering steaks. I was 19 years old. I did not understand the difference between medium rare and medium and well done. I didn't eat steak that much. And so if a guest ordered a steak, I would forget to ask them how they wanted their steak prepared because it wasn't something that I had to think about on a regular basis. And so if I saw that and I forgot, I'm putting the order in the computer and then it prompts me, how does the steak be prepared? And I'm like, they look like a medium. And I would like look, I would be embarrassed to go over and ask them, I'm so sorry, I forgot how you like your steak prepared. Right? And so I thought that that would impact my tip negatively because I wasn't attention to detail, right, as a server. And so I'd be like, they look like a well done. And then the steak would come out and they're like, no, I wanted this different temperature. And the kitchen would have to remake that, right? So if all of a sudden as a manager you notice, okay, David, every shift you have 3 steaks that have to be remade. Okay. My manager, Kristen, she ended up what the solution that she came up with was in my little checkbook, right? I kept all my receipts. She put a neon pink index card that said meat temperature with a question mark, right? So as I'm writing, at the corner of my eye, I see meat temperature. And then eventually I didn't need it anymore, right? So she took corrective action in the fact that, hey, David, you account for 90% of our steak mistakes. We need to get that down. Okay. Another example at TGI Fridays. When I was a server, when I was trained, that's my first time ever being a server. The person who trained me told me, hey, David, if you don't add drinks to your guest's check, they're going to add that to your tip. Right. So back then, a tea or a drink was like $2.50. Right. Now they're what, like $3-4. Back then it was 250. So the way he taught me as a trainer was that if you don't put 250 on their check, they're going to add that 250 to your tip. So instead of $5, they're going to give you 750. Right? How many times do you think that actually happened?
Never.
Almost never. Kristen, again, she was on it. She said, hey, David, I noticed that table 42 has 4 T's, but I don't see them in the computer. Please make sure you get them on the check before you drop the check. I was like, okay, because hey, she's giving me the benefit of the doubt. Maybe I got quadruple sat and I just forgot to add those T's, right? She's giving me the benefit of the doubt. And then Kristen's going to take a note. At 2 o'clock, I told David to put those 4 T's on the check before he drops the check. And she's going to go back to the system and she's going to check whether or not I actually put those 4 T's. Okay. Finally, one day she asked me, why don't you put drinks on your checks? And I flat out told her. I was like, the other guy at the other Fridays told me not to, because then if I think they're cool, they're going to add that to my tip. And she was like, David, how do people tip? How do people tip?
Percentage off
By
the
percentage
total.
off the total. She's like, so if you are averaging a 20 to 25% tip and you have a table of 4 and you put a $2.50 tea on each person, that's an extra $10. That's $2 that's added to your tip because they're going to tip based on the percentage. They're not going to study their receipt and be like, oh my gosh, he's so cool. He left the drinks off our check. We're going to add that $10 onto his check. No, that didn't happen. And as soon as she put it in that perspective, I was like, oh, you're right. I'm going to charge for everything. I'm going to drive that ticket price up, right? That check price. So, taking that corrective action is something you have to do as a manager. Sometimes it takes some detective work. Sometimes it takes figuring out what is the problem. It's not always super clear. And then that way you can, the next time you do your budget, okay, let's say for whatever reason, the cost of eggs goes up. That has happened. Cost of tomatoes goes up. Well, maybe next time we're going to increase our food percentage just a little bit more just because we know that sometimes there's fluctuation in the ingredients. Okay, so our corrective action allows us to identify what that problem is and then fix it the next time we do the budget. Okay, but you as a manager have to be able to explain when you have a situation with your food costs being higher, like over budget. You can say, yes, I know that we are over budget on food. However, if you look at our sales, not this situation, but if you look at our sales and our sales are 10% higher and my food cost is only 3% higher, that's a good situation, right? What's the worst situation?
Sales are lower.
Our sales are lower and all of our costs are higher. That's when you gotta be like, okay, we gotta start sending people home. When it's considered when a labor cost is way too high, we gotta start thinking about what we're gonna do to control that. Okay? Questions, comments, concerns about this? All right. So let's jump into chapter 3. All right, so today, chapter 3, no class tomorrow. Next week will be chapter 4. We're going to spend both days on chapter 4 next week because chapter 4 is one of my most favorite chapters of this entire textbook. Chapter 4 is we get to analyze our menu and figure out what are our rock stars and what are our not performing menu items, and then how do we change that? Okay, so we'll get to chapter 3 today, and then we'll go through chapter 4 next week. And then remember, the following week, we have no class. It's independent study the following week. The 22nd, the 22nd, 25th, 6th? No, 3rd and 5th, 23rd and 25th. We do not have class, remember? Because I will be out of town. Okay? So what is food cost?
What it costs to buy food.
The amount of money we spend on the ingredients to buy food. Okay? When does something become part of our food cost? When we use it. Absolutely. So if I buy a 50-pound bag of flour, that's not part of my food cost yet. It's only part of my food cost when I'm using it to produce food. Okay? So it only becomes part of our food cost when it is actually in the production of making something for food. What about beverage? What's a beverage cost? The ingredients it takes to make a beverage. Absolutely. Okay. Is there ever, what do you think? Yes? No? Maybe. Yes is thumbs up. No is thumbs down. Maybe is sideways. Is there ever time that a liquid is part of food cost? Yes? No? Maybe.
When it's a broth or a stock?
Okay, so a beverage that we normally would drink, is it part of food cost? Possibly, yeah, when we put it into a stock or a sauce. What about things that we normally eat? Are they ever considered beverage costs? What do you think?
For a stew?
So we normally eat lemons, and how would we use them in the production of a beverage? As a
lemonade.
Good.
To make lemonade, yeah.
To make lemonade.
Tea.
Or hot tea, or put it on the water, or put the lemon on the tea, right? That cost, although it's a food, is actually part of a beverage cost. Okay? If I'm using strawberries in a smoothie, that strawberry is actually a beverage cost instead of a food cost. So if you remember, sometimes on our P&L, how it would have, oops, there we go, highlighter, make sure I'm in a good color. So at the top, we have sales, and then we have food cost, beverage cost. This is how we'd separate those. So we know what is our food cost, all the ingredients to make our food. So if we had wine in our sauce, we got to put that from our beverage area. We got to move it over to our food area. And if I put olives in my Bloody Marys, and if I put bacon in my Bloody Mary, which is a real good thing. Okay. If I take those are normally the things that I eat, and I put them over into my beverage costs category, okay? If you want to be super specific, okay? We're going to talk about how we find it in general and then how we can make it more specific, okay? So the basic way that we calculate our food cost. Now, what we're doing in this situation is we are looking for this section of our triangle, okay? Prior to this moment right now, I've always just given you a number. And it's usually a number that I just pull out of anywhere, right? Out of thin air. But in this case, this is where we are finding this particular number right here, okay? We take our beginning inventory. We can go in and count what is in our beginning inventory. We can put a dollar amount to that inventory, okay? And then if we purchase something, does that add to or take away from our inventory? If we purchase something, it adds to. So we're going to add all the purchases for that particular period, okay? And then, end of the period, we have our ending inventory. We can go in and physically count. Is that part of our food costs if it's still in inventory? We haven't used it yet. It's still in inventory. So now we're going to subtract whatever that ending inventory is, and that's going to give us our cost of goods sold. Cost of goods sold, we oftentimes will abbreviate that to COGS, cost of goods sold. So basically, this is the cost of everything that we sold. Okay? Now, this does take into consideration waste, right? Because if I have to remake something, I'm probably not going to sell it, but it's no longer in my inventory, which means I'm going to take that into account. Okay? So this is where I can figure out, is my cost under control or not? Okay? So let's do an example. We have $3,500 available in our beginning inventory. Okay? So are we going to add or subtract our purchases? We are adding. So that's a total of $13,500. Okay? $13,500. Total available inventory. That means at any given point during the month of February, I had $13,500 worth of inventory at my disposal to prepare the food I needed to sell. Okay? The reason why I kind of point that out is because there is one question on your final exam that you're going to take in 13 weeks that asks you about the total available inventory. But the problem gives you all the information, and so you're going to probably answer the cost of goods sold. I'll point that out to you as we get closer to the final. But I just wanted to give you the difference between total available inventory and the cost of goods sold. Okay. So now, ending inventory. What do we do with that 2,500? We have to subtract it. So the 500s cancel out. That means during the month of February, we spent $11,000 on our food and maybe beverages. Cost of goods sold. Okay, this is everything. Cost of goods sold. Questions, comments, concerns about this? We start with, let me give you an in-class example. Okay, the snacks that are over here behind the front desk. I could go through and calculate how much I have on the shelf. Okay, that's my beginning inventory. And then after class is done, and after you guys have enjoyed some snacks, I could go in and figure out how much is left. That's my ending inventory. Then I can figure out by class how much, I'm not selling anything, obviously, but how much food is consumed in each class. Okay? Do it beforehand, do it after. Whatever was taken away is what was spent on that particular period. Questions about this? All right. Now, March, the next month. What's missing? Beginning inventory. Where does that come from? Oscar says last month. Oscar is correct. My ending inventory is 2,500. So what happens on February 28th, or every 4 years, February 29th, that next morning when I open up shop, it should be the same amount. If the amount is different, then I got people stealing my stuff. Okay? So that becomes my new beginning inventory for the previous period. Is the ending for the previous becomes my new beginning for that new period. Okay? Same thing. Let's add these up. What do we get? 17,000. 17,000. Okay. This time I have $3,500 left in my inventory. So I'm going to subtract that, and what do I get? 13,500. Do we all agree? Okay. So that means in March, I spent $13,500. Because I spent more money in March than I did in February. Does that make sense? Why? Aiden, why do you think it makes more sense to spend more money in March than it is February?
To spend more in March than February.
Say that one more time.
To spend more in March than February.
Because it's a longer month.
A few more days. Good. What else? Any other ideas? Okay. What happens in February or March that doesn't happen in February? Spring break. Okay. In San Antonio, what happens in February that doesn't happen in March? Valentine's Day and, I mean, Valentine's Day is everywhere. But what happens in San Antonio in February? It's rodeo month, right? And so in February, our February might look different depending on where we are. If we're close to the AT&T Center or Frost Bank Center, if we're close to any kind of central things, right? So there is no good or bad. It's what is compared to your budget, what did you plan to do, and what did you actually do? Okay. Now take a look at this. This ending inventory number. Okay. That means that's product that's in our inventory. The longer it stays in there, what's the potential that could happen? It could spoil, or you guys are all honest.
Stolen.
It could get stolen. Okay, good. I'm glad that wasn't your first thought. Okay. You could get stolen if it's in our inventory long enough, right? We'll talk about this, I think, at some point. But there's this rule of, I learned this one time in a management class, the 80-10-10 rule. 80-10-10 rule says that 10% of the people in this world are honest and they're gonna do the right thing no matter what. 10% of the people in this world are dishonest and they're going to do the thing, they're going to break the rules no matter what. 80% of the people are going to do the right thing if there's the potential of being caught. So if you as a manager are not continually looking at your inventory, and one time, okay, David's got a family, he's got a big family, and they're all coming over on Sunday for a cookout. So I'm just going to take this package of hamburgers because I don't have time to go to HEB. Okay. Or meat's really expensive. So I'm gonna take this one package of hamburgers. Nobody misses a package of hamburgers. The next month, this barbecue's happening again because everyone loved the burgers so much. And now it's doubled in size. Nobody caught it last month. And so now I'm gonna take 2 packages of hamburgers. Right? And so if we're not keeping up with our inventory, which we'll talk about in later chapters, we really need to make sure that we're taking that inventory, because then if it's in our inventory, there's the potential that could spoil and or grow legs and walk out of our establishment. So look at February, 2,500 compared to March, 3,500. Holy cow, we have $1,000 more worth of inventory in our storage in March. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Not a great thing, okay? Because that's an extra $1,000. What we're going to talk about in chapters 5, 6, 7, and 8 is the purchasing cycle and how we know how much to purchase, okay? So what this tells me, just from my experience and looking at this, and again, maybe it's not the right answer, but as an investigator, you have to start figuring out, okay, why do I have $1,000 more in March? Oh yeah, I forget. During spring break, when we ordered all that product, we thought we were going to be busy. We had a hurricane come through. And so now we weren't that busy. But I still ordered all that product. That doesn't make sense. I need to teach my purchasing person, okay, if we're not going to be busy, we need to not order as much. Or if we weren't as busy in the past and we had all the extra inventory, don't order as much this next time. Okay. So that's really, really important. Questions, comments, concerns about basic food cost? Again, this number right here, this 13,500, that's this number right here. That's this cost that we are looking for. Okay. The sales that goes in the bottom, where does that number come from? Where do we find that number?
Purchases for the period.
Not the purchases for the period. Good, but that's like if we take all of our guest checks, that's all the money that's coming in. So all the money that our guests paid throughout the whole period, the whole month in this case, that's where we get that number. So we pull it from our computer. This is how much money in sales we brought. That's that top line of our P&L statement. Okay, that's our revenue. And then the percentage, we'll use those two numbers to see if this compares, how this compares to our budget. Were we over? Were we under? Okay. Questions, comments, concerns? If we want to be very specific, we have to think about transfers. That's what I was talking about. So if those strawberries are $25, I'm going to subtract them from my food cost and add them to my beverage cost. If that wine that I'm using is $10, I'm going to subtract that $10 from my beverage cost column. I'm going to add it over to my food cost column because I've just used it in my sauce. Okay? That's our transfers. Sometimes we have to transfer from unit to unit. Okay? What does that mean? Unit to unit.
Different positions in the.
So this might be something that you maybe haven't quite experienced yet. In hotels specifically, we have different outlets. Okay. So an outlet is basically a revenue center. So let's use the JW Marriott. Is anybody familiar with the JW Marriott up in the hill country near like Stone Oak area?
Yes.
Okay. They have like 7 different food outlets. They have a sports bar. They have a breakfast, lunch, and dinner outlet. They have a whiskey bar. They have the pool dining out at the water parks. They have all these different outlets, right? Well, let's say the sports bar is much busier than they thought they were going to be, and they ran out of chicken wings. We can't run out of chicken wings at a sports bar. But the 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, Cibolo Moon, they have extra chicken wings. I'm gonna take the cost of those wings and move them over to this restaurant, over to this unit. Okay? Because if I don't take that cost, think about it this way. If I get all those chicken wings, okay, over here at the sports bar, high velocity, my sales go up, but my costs stay very low. Right? Because I'm not going to account for those extra chicken wings, the ingredients. But now if we come over here to Cibolo Moon, I've given all those chicken wings to David. So that means my costs are still pretty high, but I'm not selling those chicken wings, which means my sales come down, and that affects my food cost percentage. So in order to keep an accurate count, we have to do the same. We have to move things from unit to unit. I can't remember in the video if I talk about this or not. But when I worked at Chester's Hamburgers in high school, once I got my driver's license, if the store on 410 was really busy and they started running low on meat, they would call our store over on Pat Booker. And they'd call the manager and say, hey, we still have 2 hours that we're open and we're down to our last 3 boxes of meat. What's your volume like? And I was like, hey, we're really slow. Okay, great. Can I borrow 3 boxes of meat? and 2 packages of buns. So yeah, that's great. Well, the
Excuse me,
manager can't
borrow?
drive it over. Well, not
Excuse me.
borrow. They're gonna have it. They're gonna take it. Sorry, wrong.
That's what I thought.
So can
So
we
I'm not sure I'd
have?
want to return to borrowed meat.
Yes, we're not doing that. So can we have meat? Can we have these buns? Absolutely, right? But the manager can't leave the store unattended. So they're going to say, hey, David, we're going to give you a free burger if you are willing to drive these 3 boxes of meat and 2 packages of buns over to store 4. Okay, great. The cost of those ingredients have to be transferred over in the accounting system. Otherwise, again, the 410 store, they're going to sell all those burgers, but their costs are going to look really low because they ran out of the product that they actually ordered. And this one over here, my costs are going to seem really high, but yet my sales don't match it. And so we have to do that to get that accurate accounting. Okay. Let's talk about standardized recipes. What is a benefit of having a standardized recipe? Okay, so we know how much we're going to use and how much we are going to need to make those. Okay, good. How much we need and how much we're going to use, yes.
It helps everybody stay on the same page.
Okay, so what do you mean by it helps everyone stay on the same page?
Pretty much if somebody else has to do it, the recipe, and they know exactly how to do it. They don't have to go to the
Okay.
last person and be like, hey, how do you do this?
Exactly. We know how to follow the recipes. Anybody ever been in a situation where you're like, you go to your favorite restaurant and you're like, hey, who's cooking tonight? Is it this person or is it this person? Because if it's this person, I'm going to order the chicken parmesan. But if it's this person, I'm going to order this chicken fried steak. And if it's this person, I'm definitely not going to order the chicken fried steak because they don't do it right. Okay. We don't want that. We want standardized recipes. We want everything to come out consistently every single time. Okay. So yeah, people can follow those recipes. What else? Yes, Aiden.
The cost of it all?
Good. We can control our cost. We know how much that portion is going to cost us because we know the ingredients that are used to make that. Okay. Good. And that'll be part of our project that we'll go over, is identifying what that cost is. Okay, good. Any other standards, any other benefits of using a standardized recipe? Those are all pretty good. Okay.
Means you know what your waste is and how much it's going to cost to assemble all the ingredients and make your recipe.
Exactly. Absolutely. We can keep our cost under control. Okay. So when we are looking at our recipes will dictate what our product specifications are. What are the ingredients that we have to purchase? What are the ingredients that we have to have on hand in order to make this recipe? Okay.
It depends on the recipe.
Let's see. Let me get someone online. Bethany. Bethany, will you give us an ingredient that we use in the kitchen? Just a very general ingredient.
Flour.
Awesome. Love it. Okay. So flour. What is a quality of flour? Sebastian?
Say like it's used in a lot of other meals.
Okay, it is used in a lot of things, but it has to be a specific flour, probably what you're working with. So what types or what qualities of flour do we work with in the kitchen?
All purpose.
All purpose. Good. All purpose. What else? Bread flour,
Pastry.
cake flour, pastry flour. Now, those of you who are hospitality and hotel folks, how many of y'all knew we had all these different types of flour? Mind blown. Can I use pastry flour when the recipe calls for bread flour? Why? The protein is different, right? All my hotel people, you're like, what? Okay, that's why your croissant tastes the way it does. Instead of you actually have experts who know what type of flour to use. Okay, we have whole wheat, right? We have bleached, unbleached. We have all-purpose bread, cake, pastry, rice flour, almond flour, gluten-free flour, okay, rye. All of these different types of flour, okay? And your recipe will tell you what flour you need to use and if there's any kind of substitutions that are allowed, okay? Can I use all-purpose flour if the recipe calls for bread flour?
Yes.
Yes, but you have to cook cornstarch.
Yes, but I have to add something else, right? I have to add more to that all-purpose flour, okay? So again, I have to know that. I have to know that information. Can I use bread flour if it calls for all-purpose flour? Probably not. If I make cookies with bread flour, what's gonna happen? They're gonna be like a brick, right? They're gonna be super hard, they're gonna be super dense. They're not gonna be a good cookie, okay? So quantity refers to how much. So do I buy 50 pounds of flour? Do I buy 25 pounds of flour? Do I buy a 5-pound bag? Right? That's the quantity. And the recipe will tell us, okay? So I had friends who own a deli. They used to own a deli. They have since sold it. But they had the Chinese chicken salad on their menu. It was the only recipe in their entire menu that used mandarin oranges, right? And they first started buying the big giant can of mandarin oranges from Cisco. But then they found out that they weren't using an entire can before it went bad, before they spoiled.
Because
So
they weren't making enough of the salad.
exactly. So they weren't producing that salad. It wasn't as much of a big seller. And so what they ended up doing was they got rid of the salad, right? And which kind of made some people upset. That was their favorite salad. Okay. What could they also have considered doing?
Purchase less.
Going to smaller cans, right? Go to HEB and buy a small can of mandarin oranges. Well, that takes extra labor, takes extra time. So you have to kind of weigh those things out, right? So the quantity that recipe will tell us.
I think it's also more expensive too, because it's not in bulk.
Exactly. Absolutely. So that will change the price of the salad. That's a great point. So then you'd have to recalculate that cost and figure out, is it worth doing that or not?
Are people gonna pay for the extra?
Exactly. Are people willing to pay the extra? We'll talk about that next week in chapter 4.
Go to a discount or salvage store where you'll
I
get.
don't know if I would like to buy mandarin oranges from a salvage store. I mean, sometimes I'll go for that yellow coupon discount, buy it today. But sometimes I look at what that actually is being sold before I decide if I'm going to buy that 25% off. If it's worth me spending the rest of the day in the bathroom. All right, so how we control our food cost. Also, the recipe is going
Mr.
to tell us
Minsky,
how many. Give me 1 second. Let me finish this thought, Tanner. The recipe is also going to tell us how many servings we get out of that full recipe. So if we get a recipe and it says we get 32 servings, we need to get 32 servings out of that. Okay. What happens if we get 33 servings out of a recipe that says 32?
There's waste.
Too big a portion. Oh, 33 too small.
If we got 33, that means we shorted people the portion of their serving, right? So it says 32. We get 33. That means we sold one extra portion. That means everybody else got a little bit less than they should have. Okay. Or if I only get 30 servings, my recipe says 32, then I have too big of portions. And so, how do we control our portions when we're making recipes, when we're actually serving and plating stuff? We can do it by weight, volume, and count. Okay, bless you. What are things that we typically measure by weight? When we're serving things, what do we typically measure by weight?
Portions.
Our steaks. We're going to summarize that as our proteins. So typically our proteins are going to be measured by weight. It's a 14-ounce steak, 16-ounce steak, a quarter-pound burger, all those different things, okay?
a 6-ounce salad?
Yeah, so we can absolutely do salads by weight as well, okay? Anything else by weight?
Mashed potato, rice.
I'm gonna say appetizers and sides. Sometimes we can do that. Appetizers and sides, right? You get like a quarter pound of whatever. Okay. Volume. What is volume?
How much space?
How much space it takes up, right? So a cup is how many volume? 8 ounces of volume, right? Okay. So what types of things do we usually measure in volume?
Soups.
Soups, drinks. Typically, it's going to be our beverages, our liquid, our sauces. Good. Okay. Those are things we're going to measure and control by volume. So if I get a gallon of ranch dressing, okay, I get a gallon of ranch dressing and I need to make 2-ounce servings. How many servings am I going to get out of that gallon?
64.
64, 128 ounces divided by 2 ounces, 64 servings. Okay. So I will know if I have 64 little cups at the end of, I measured out exactly 2 ounces of salad dressing. Okay, good. What about count?
Dessert cookies.
Okay, desserts maybe. I like that. We get 1 brownie or we get 2 cookies. That's dessert. What else?
Sometimes it's like add-ons to like made plates.
Okay, so like what sense?
Like on the
The restaurant I work at, we do like an add-on for GSP, so it's grilled shrimp.
Okay, so shrimp.
We do
A la
bacon
carte?
for an 8 counts.
Good.
Bacon or cheese for a burger?
Okay, so pieces of cheese.
Could you do lemons for like sweet teas?
Okay, lemons.
Pickles.
Say produce.
Condiments.
Okay, let's put condiments in general. I like that. Okay, toppings for things. All right. Seafood typically is by the count. Okay. Usually, I don't know the exact breakdown. I'm just gonna make up something. What do these numbers mean when it comes to seafood, like scallops and shrimp?
The amount of what's in there isn't exact, it's just between those two numbers.
It's how many are in each pound. So what this is saying is under 15. So that means in a pound, there's less than 15. Okay. 16 to 25. That means there's 16 to 25 shrimp or scallops within a pound. And then 26 to 32 within a pound. So which one is the biggest? This is the biggest. Which one's the smallest?
Okay, same way, just different sizes.
So shrimp under 15. Okay. Those are your like giant Gulf shrimp. And then you've got the little tiny ones that you're going to use for like, I don't know, for egg rolls. Okay. I'm going to chop those. Do I need to buy a beautiful giant shrimp if I'm going to just chop it up and put it in something? No. Right? These are typically more expensive because we want to put them in like a shrimp cocktail and put them on a martini glass because I don't know if that's still a thing or not. It was at one point. You put the cocktail sauce in the martini glass and put the shrimp over the edge, right? What's that?
We do that with
And
like
enchiladas, okay. Yeah. So do I need to have that? Or if I'm doing it like in a like a shrimp scampi or like a shrimp Alfredo, maybe I can use those smaller ones to toss them in the sauce, right? That recipe is gonna tell me. Okay. So let's do a quick example where we use all 3.
Chef Aminsky,
Yes, sir.
may I talk to you a bit after class?
Yep, absolutely. All right.
All right.
So we have, in this case, 4 ounces of salad. That's our weight. Okay. So we have 4 ounces of salad of lettuce. Then our volume is 2 ounces of salad dressing. Okay. And then finally, count. Well, let's use red because it'll be make more sense. We have 3 tomato wedges for our salad. So this recipe includes aspects of all three portion size control. 4 ounces of lettuce, 2 ounces of dressing, and 3 tomato wedges. That's my standard recipe. So that way, every single time it goes out, it looks just like that. Questions, comments, concerns about portion sizes? All right. We'll talk more about this in the project. But one thing I want you to recognize and understand is that volume and weight don't always match. Okay. And typically this is in dry ingredients. So a cup of flour is 8 ounces of volume. Does that cup of flour weigh 8 ounces? No. A cup of brown sugar, a cup of white granulated sugar, a cup of castor sugar, a cup of powdered sugar, they all have the same volume of 8 ounces of volume, but they don't have the same weight. Okay. And so as we go through the project, if you have a dry ingredient, and in most recipes, because not all of us are bakers and we don't all have scales at home, most recipes are going to give you a tablespoon of salt or a teaspoon of baking powder, right? Whereas our bakers are going to be super exact and they're going to weigh everything. But for the average cook at home, when you have a recipe, it's usually using volume, cups, tablespoons, teaspoons, things like that. And if it's a dry ingredient, we buy that stuff by the pound or in weight, but we actually only use it by volume, okay? And there's going to be a calculator that I'm going to give you in your project module that will help you put those numbers in, and it'll calculate that weight based on the volume, okay? We're going to skip that. And the last 10 minutes of class, we're going to spend on this concept of edible portion, yield percentage, and our yield factor. Our as purchased. Okay. So go ahead and in your notes, draw a triangle. Okay. In your notes, draw a triangle. We know one of the sections of the bottom. One of the sections of the bottom is what? Percentage. Okay. What is the universal formula for percentage? Part over the whole. Okay. If you put cost over sales on your defining control assignment, I'll give you credit for that. But really, the universal formula is part over the whole. Okay. So in this case, our as purchased is the whole. So I purchased 25 pounds of potatoes. That's my as purchased. That's the whole amount. The part is my edible portion. What is left over after I have prepared it. Okay. After I've processed it, I've peeled it, I've chopped it up, I've cut off the bad spots. Okay. I'm going to lose some of that product. So if I'm looking for the edible yield or the percentage, okay, I'm looking for that percentage. What is my formula? I cover up percentage and what's left over? EP divided by the AP. Okay, so EP of 85 or 8.5 pounds divided by 10 pounds is equal to 0.85, which we know as a percentage is 85%. Okay, 85%. So that tells me that of my bell peppers, 85% of my product should be left over. Right? I buy it by the pound, but there's also stems. There's a clump of seeds in the middle. Maybe I'm going to use a nice julienne. So I'm going to cut off the tops and the bottom to make the middle section very nice and even. So when I julienne, they're all consistent and the same length. Okay. So 85% of that, 15% is the trash. 85% I can actually use. You all follow me so far? All right, next example. This time, 25 pounds of bell peppers. So now I'm wondering, okay, how much will I have left over if I have an 80% yield factor? So that yield factor comes down 85%. Okay. And so now my as purchased AP times the percentage. So 25 pounds times 0.85 is equal to
20.
21.25. Okay. Okay, so I have 21.25 pounds left over. Okay. Questions, comments, concerns about how we got 21.25 pounds? Let's see how we're doing on time. Okay, we got 8 minutes. We're good.
What is the EP?
EP is edible portion.
And the AP,
AP is as purchased. So as purchased means like what did we purchase from Cisco? Or think about when you go grocery shopping, what did you bring home through your front door from HEB or Walmart or Target, wherever you do your grocery shopping? Okay, whatever you brought home, that's your as purchased. And then we have to process it in some way. And so that's the edible portion, what we're actually being able to use. Okay. The last question. How much do I actually purchase? So you can utilize this, okay? Now, I need 35 pounds of bell peppers. I need to make sure I have 35 pounds of bell peppers. But if I buy 35 pounds, am I going to end up with that at the end? No. So now I have to figure out how much do I need. And so what is my formula for edible portion? Or sorry, as purchased? Is EP divided by the percentage. So 35 pounds is what I need, divided by my percentage of 85. Now, should this number be higher or lower? It should be higher because I need to order more product in order to be able to process it. Okay. And so what is 35 divided by 0.85? 41.17. Okay. Can I say 41.2? Why?
It's like it,
Am I going to create 0.03 of a pound of potato or peppers out of nothing? No, I can't. So this is where understanding what these numbers mean is important. We could say 41.1. Okay, just drop everything else, and that's okay. That helps us make sure we're going to order. Or if we do want to order just enough, we want to make sure we order 41 pounds. But I may say, you know what, I'm going to order 42 or 43 just in case I have a little bit, so I have a little bit more extra. Okay. Just in case one's bad. Yeah. But I'm not going to buy like 50 pounds. That's 9 extra pounds. That's too much. Okay. So questions, comments, concerns about using this AP/EP percentage. Same triangle, right? Just different things. We're talking about how much is left over, how much is edible versus how much we bought. Okay. So what's that?
What did the EY stand for?
Edible yield. Edible yield. Edible yield and yield percentage are interchangeable. Okay. So in my last 5 minutes of class, let me show you. There is a chapter 3 quiz. Okay. There is a chapter 3 quiz. And in this quiz, there is a brisket math assignment. Okay. How many of y'all have taken basic food prep? When you did your brisket, the
I
cook
have.
loss test and all that kind of stuff, right? So that brisket, this is going to kind of go through and utilize this edible portion, this yield percentage to determine how much brisket we need to order for a catering job. Okay. So There is a video right here that will walk you through the assignment step by step by step. Okay. And then this is the document that you're going to utilize. Okay. And then then your quiz, when you do your quiz, okay, the first couple questions are going to be multiple choice and or fill in the blank. Okay. And then starting with question number 7, those are going to be the questions from your brisket math. So you can print out that document and you can write on it and do all your math. And then you come into the quiz, you can just type in your answers directly from the quiz. Okay. So questions 7 through 14.
And the math's on
The math is on that video.
same.
The
as
math
we
is
did.
right here on this video. Okay. I show you with different numbers and I walk you through the process on this video. Okay. And then you'll actually upload your work on the quiz. Okay. Now let's take a look real quick at this one. You have 10
Question, sir.
hold on one second, Tanner. You have 10 attempts on this quiz. 10 attempts on this quiz. So what is my expectation for this quiz?
That's going to be difficult.
You have 10 attempts. Okay. If you try it, and you're going to see which answers you got wrong. Okay. Maybe go back to your notes, see what maybe you're missing. Try it again on the 3rd attempt. If you still don't have it, come find me either during my office hours or talk to me before or after class. Okay. And ask for help. But don't just say, Mr. Niska, I don't get it. You don't get what? Okay. Is it question 5? Is it question 6? What don't you get? But then also I'm going to say, show me your work. Okay. One thing that I do
Mr. Minsky.
recommend is that you take a picture of your work and send me it as an email. And then I can identify, okay, this is the steps that the video said to take. And this is the step that you're getting wrong. Okay. But if you just say, Mr. Minsky, I don't get question 5, I don't know what you don't get about question 5. Okay. I need you to be a little bit more specific. Okay. So this assignment is going to be due next week on Tuesday. So you have a full week to work on this. Please do not wait until 8 o'clock on Monday night to send me an email and say, Mr. Minsky, what am I doing wrong? Okay. I would try it at least once. You have 10 attempts. Okay. 10 attempts. Okay. All right. That's all I have. If you came in late, please let me know so I can update my attendance. I'm going to stop. I'm not going to end the meeting, Tanner. Just give me one moment to log out and stop the recording.